Good afternoon, welcome. Thank you so much for deciding to spending the grand final of Ignite 2017 with us. It's been a long week for sure, and we're so happy to see a full room. We expected like, all right, 100 people maybe, but this is awesome. My name is Johan. This is Mr. Mikael. We'll be taking care of you for the next 75 minutes. And I'm really hoping we can have a sort of discussion in here as well, so we encourage questions. And you never know, good questions might be rewarded.
Let's define it like this. We're not going to bring the books back. This is a 200 level session, and that means that we won't do any deep dives. But it doesn't mean we're not going to do PowerShell scripts. Because PowerShell scripts today means that's basically 200 level. I mean, you need to know PowerShell anyway. So we're going to do some scripts anyway.
Yeah. And we also have a few experts in the room. We have Niehaus, Ronnie, Amy, Andreas. Can also help answering questions throughout the session. Awesome. I also see an entire row of team members from my former employer also. Very nice.
Yeah. No, yeah, okay.
So this is us.
It is. We've been MVPs for 13 years. I've been working in the industry for
a very long time.
Yeah. Instead of years, we can define it like this. I've been working since 8-inch floppies. And Johan has been working since 5.25-inch floppies.
Gives you perspective. And what this means, it means we have not seen everything, but we've seen a lot. So if you have any questions, just ask with them. Out with them, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes.
And we love steaks also.
We do.
Yeah. So this environment that we are using, I'll be using through entire Ignite and other sessions as well on conferences and things. It is available for download on our blogs. So you simply search for the keyword hydration. You will find PowerShell scripts that helps you quickly, within just a few hours, spin up from nothing to having a complete lab environment up and running with domain controllers, config manager servers, WSUS servers, even MBT servers if you use them for something. So these days, I think it's so important to have a lab environment. If someone would ask me the key tool a technician need to have these days, a good lab environment. Because Microsoft is, especially around servicing, they are releasing so much stuff every other week. And you simply cannot test everything in production. It's kind of nice to have a lab environment where you can start and play around with things and learn things. And it doesn't have to be a supercomputer either. I mean, I typically brag about my laptop, but you don't really need to have a supercomputer. Any machine, solid state drive, 16 gigs of RAM, and you can actually do most things. However, can you put in more than 16? Good for you, but that's like the minimum level.
You can also buy 2 racks and fill them with servers and have them at home.
Yeah, that will certainly go well with your manager. Can I have 2 racks, please, with servers?
Yeah.
For lab purposes.
I didn't really ask for the racks. I just went to the job and
ordered them,
borrowed them with no intention of returning them. So now I have them at home.
Okay. Well, I have to say over the years, I have learned that it's kind of easier sometimes to ask for forgiveness afterwards than for permissions to get something.
So true.
Poor Marcus, our manager, he's hardened.
So let's talk about Windows 10 servicing at a glance. We're going to talk about quality updates, feature updates, and we're also going to talk about reducing network impact.
So the deal with Windows 10 is that, well, even for Windows 7 now, Microsoft are releasing these monthly updates, sometimes multiple times a month. And they're getting quite big, around a gig or so. They released Patch Tuesday traditionally, but then there are also other days of the month where you see new updates are coming. So they typically are rolled into the next month of Patch Tuesday. So there is a sort of a cycle going on all the time for the quality updates.
Yeah, we've seen anything between 1 patch a month up to 5 patches a month. So Patch Tuesday could be
Wednesday.
Yeah, or every Tuesday in a month as well. So
So then we have the feature updates, and I have been a ton of sessions throughout this Ignite, and we'll try to specifically for those. And if to summarize it shortly, these days Microsoft are releasing new versions of Windows 10 twice a year. Each version will be supported for 18 months from that release date. It typically takes Microsoft a little while to get the code perfect for production. So you have to spend a few months on testing and validating that in your environment. If that can take you 1 month or 4 months, that depends, but typically it will take you at least a few months to do that.
And the biggest challenge is actually this. Let's assume that you say, we're not going to do any current branch, or we're not going to do the stable version. We're going to do just the, after 6 months. That's the only one we're going to try. That means that if you do that, you're going to wait for almost a year before you try starting testing and validating applications. We encourage people to start using the Insider Preview, because if you have the Insider Preview, you can start testing your applications and methods and working long before that even comes to a stable version. So it just gives you more time. I asked Mr. Niehaus if Insider Preview is a very common operating system inside Microsoft, and he said something like, well, if you're not running Insider Preview at Microsoft, they're going to look at you and say, what's wrong with you? More or less everybody runs Insider Preview here. That's the way they do it. Doesn't mean you should, but you should have a few people, and you're going to be one of them running the Insider Preview. The really bad thing about this is that a lot of customers say, well, we're going to do Insider Preview. I'm going to have this machine as my real machine, and then I'm going to have a virtual machine over here. That's going to be the Insider Preview. I'm going to use this for testing. Have you logged on to the testing machine? No, I didn't have time this year. But I'm using this machine. It's supposed to be the opposite around. You run the Insider Preview, and if it doesn't work, then you have the virtual machine to go back to and perform the duties you're supposed to do.
We've also been working this year with a lot of colleges, both me and Mikael, and they typically have different deployment cycles. They often deploy at either winter times or summer times, and sometimes it actually goes a year in between those deployments. And you technically absolutely can skip a Windows 10 version. You can, because you can still hit that 18-month window from the first one. But you are really shortened down the time you have to your disposal to do that deployment. Because if you think about it, you want to verify it for at least a month or two. And you already spent 12 months missing the first one. So now it's month 14, meaning you have to be done within 4 months to hit that 18-month window. Because after that 18-month window, you will not get security updates anymore. And these days, coming to a manager, if you have a ransomware attack or something, and tell them that you purposely did not upgrade and did not receive security updates, that is a career-limiting move right there to purposely skip security updates.
Yeah. And then we have the discussion about, but if I deploy a new version of Windows and where I deploy the feature upgrade, that's going to require a lot of user training, because the UI in Windows 10 between 15.11 and 16.07 is huge.
Yeah, it was a new icon in the start menu.
Really?
Yeah, it was, I think 5 new ones, actually.
The thing is that as soon as you start using the new features, then you need education. Let's say that you enable the PIN code or Windows Hello. Do you need to enable that on all the users? No, you don't. You need to enable that on those users that really need to have that. We have the shared PC mode, which is nice in many situations, but it's not required. But for the kiosk machines and the training machines, we can use shared PC. It's just easier for you to have one version of Windows to manage instead of a multitude of them. And then you just manage the features inside them. If you don't enable shared PC, no user will ever notice that. And if you do enable shared PC, the only thing that happens is that they go like, oh darn, it's so fast to log on. Yeah, that's a shame, but we can put it back in the old version, so it takes a long time to log on to the computer if you want to have that as well. So I don't believe really in the training of users, because the difference in the UI is not that big.
So what most companies run into as a challenge with Windows 10 deployments and servicing has been the sheer size of the updates. As I mentioned before, 1 gig updates. I also noticed a few people are standing up against the wall. There are actually free seats available somewhere here. So possibly if we can do a little bit of a defrag in the audience. To have them the ability to sit down also.
Yeah, we don't want to do data deduplication because that's going to hurt like crazy.
Yeah, defrag is better. So the impact Windows 10 has on updates in terms of network has been a big issue for a lot of companies. And there have been several sessions this week. For example, Mikael did a 75-minute session on reducing networking impact. I just came from Andrea's session. He spent 75 minutes on branch cache. So we're going to summarize the entire Ignite week of reducing network impact in about 3 minutes. So in Windows 10, there are a ton of technologies that you can enable and use to reduce the impact it will have on your network. So, for example, in terms of quality updates, you can enable express installation files. They are bigger to download for sure, 3 to 5 times the size, but the stuff that goes down to the client is like 10% of that normal 1 gig that you push out to the client. So that will help. We have delivery optimization in Windows 10. We have branch cache available since back in Windows Vista timeframe. We have peer caching enabled for the, how many runs config manager in here? It's a good portion of the room, nice. You have peer cache, still a pre-release feature, but it's available in 1706 to try out and use. And we still have bits, of course, to limit or try to throttle things that are going on over the network. And if you're not happy with what's natively available on the Microsoft platform, there are indeed third-party vendors that has doing this for quite a while and extend that even further. So we have Adaptiva and 1E, that is the most known vendors for peer-to-peer things. But this is where we're going. Not putting out a ton of servers out there in every single branch office, but instead trying to use software on the clients themselves to be smart around network distribution. And I don't care so much what kind of solution you end up with eventually, but you really have to pick one. Because you cannot have a remote server, 400 clients in a branch office, and start to trickle down 1 gig files over the network, or even 100 meg files, and then the feature updates, there are 3.5 gig in size if you do the sequence-based approach, 2.5 gig if you're using the SD file-based approach. But still, there is a lot of data that needs to come over the wire. And everything you can do to reduce that load is of good, I think.
True.
Yes, so demo. So a little while ago, I tried to summarize what is available from Microsoft and how you can set it up. You probably want to switch over. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I want to switch over.
Good job.
Thank you.
So if you search for the magic keyword reducing on my blog, I summarized a guide. It's Frodo.
The Lego version.
The Lego version of Frodo. Anyway, I summarized a few different guides, how you can use these native technologies step by step to configure them in your environments, in your lab environments, so you can start to learn and play around with these technologies. And common for all of these environments is how many networks do you need to efficiently lab and test with peer caching and remote offices and things? Well, you need more than one, right? So that's typically the most common problem people run into. All right, how can I deal with this? So it happens to be that if I pick one of these guys, I also have put together some guides. Let's see where I put that one here. How you can use virtual routers, how you can set them up so you can simulate this on a given environment. On my laptop here, I actually have 4 networks. Amy has actually 5 networks on her router that she's using to test things. But in virtualized hardware, virtualized VMs, of course, you can put in multiple network cards and have them route traffic in between your environments. Depending on router you choose, You can also do bandwidth limitations. For example, I've been using a pfSense router a lot, free for use for download. It supports you to actually add in stuff like package loss. So you can actually simulate a really crappy connection. It allows you to add in delays on the network. So you can have high latency networks without having high latency networks. So you can effectively try these out in like a real world type environment.
So that basically means that you can simulate real world.
Yes.
The crappy network we have at work, that's easy to simulate. Okay, just checking here.
Yeah, but this is key. You don't need multiple servers, of course you can have, but you can actually run everything in a local box. So the only thing, get an SSD drive, and when you get that SSD drive, I have a few of them, find, if you can, find the shinier ones. And the shinier ones are the one that ends with this. They are a bit more expensive, but they're not that much more expensive. The fun thing about these SSDs, they are like 6 times the speed of a normal SSD. And you can run tons of VMs on that one. So that is actually, even though that's my smallest SSD, this is where I have most of my workloads. This is where I have most of my VMs that I have running here in my lab environment. Of course, I don't run them all at the same time, but I'm using deduplication as a way of reducing the size it takes on the disk. It's a built-in feature in Windows Server. It can technically be hacked into Windows 10, but it's not supported. So don't yell at me if it doesn't work. But you can see I have almost 1.5 terabyte of VMs consuming not that much on the disk. So here is the deal. Every time my lab environment starts to run out of disk space, I simply run a dedupe job, take a break for an hour or two, and I will come back and I have my disk space back again. So super efficient. It does not affect performance in any way. Sometimes it actually increases performance of my VM. That's pretty cool. So that was a few samples around or where you can find guides to set this up. When you do this in Config Manager, when you start to get your networking together, let me see where I put my site server here. Once you have started to play around with adding content and doing these router transfers and things for your updates and servicing whatever that you need, you actually get some additional information in the Config Manager reports. There is also a there is a dashboard that gets available when you enable peer caching, and that will show you the content type that will be happening in the network. So depending on this network, I had a little bit of traffic going from branch cache, but most, as you can see, came from a cloud distribution point. If I go to a different network, in this case Chicago, I had certainly more traffic coming from peer caching because it's a remote office, a little bit from branch cache, but still a lot from my distribution point. But this is just a lab and test environment, so I have been resetting this back and forth all the time. But this is how you can see how efficient this stuff is, together with the reports. Yeah.
Perfect. So if you've, yeah.
Oh,
picture,
it's so nice.
It's nice. If you ever want to hire us, don't hire us for these skills in PowerPoint or in MS Paint. We are really crappy on graphics. But this is the infamous Windows 10 feature update wheel. What we want you to understand is that you can schedule the next 10 years in your calendar. You never need to attend to any business meeting because you can classify yourself as busy. That's pretty neat, actually. What do you do on Monday? I'm busy. Next Monday? Yep, busy. Are you available? Yep. 2049. That's going to be my funeral. So what you can do here is very simple. 0309 is the release date for almost everything that Microsoft runs. That is the starting point for you. That means that you download the bits, and if you do imaging, you create your reference image, you add the application, you deploy it to a test machine, you verify that everything. Can I even create a reference image? No. Okay, darn. Let's fix that. You start poking around with a new version of server, new version of ADK, new version of UAV, new version of AppV, because everything gets released. Office 365 comes at the same time. Then you have approximately 4 months to spend on testing, deploying, verification, and giving Microsoft a massive amount of feedback. At that time, they do really listen to you. You now have the ability to say, hey, we have this blocking issue. We can't deploy this new version because we have driver issues. Please help us contact the vendor and have them fix that. You also need to goof around with new drivers. Then, after about 4 months, Microsoft is going to declare this version as stable enough to be running in production.
And that doesn't have to be 4 months. It's just that it's typically been that time where Microsoft had said something is CBB, ready, business branch ready. Now they call it semi-annual channel broad. Did I get that right, Michael? Semi-annual channel broad? Okay. Drop the word broad, semi-annual channel. But simply, it has been around for a while, and it's now ready to be deployed. But as Michael said, during those first months, go ahead and test things.
So then you have a stable release, you're upgrading, you now have the ability to start upgrading your infrastructure because your SQL server needs to be upgraded, your configuration manager needs to be upgraded, all the other things that you have in your solution that you are using for managing your clients need to be upgraded. And then comes a new version and then it all starts over again. So if you did everything manually the first time, then you're going to do it manually the next time. You're going to do that for a couple of years until you realize that, hey, I've done this before. I actually clicked exact the same thing the last 6 years. I think I'm dumb. So you're going to eventually realize that the only way to really test the application is to automate that, to have script wrappers, to have something that verifies that the application runs, and so on. Otherwise, this is going to take forever. You also don't need to test all the applications. You're going to end up in a situation where you define the critical business application and you test and verify them. All the other ones, you're using information on the internet or in the cloud that says that 600,000 people have tested this application. They all claim it works. None have any failure with that application. Do you really need to test it? Like, they could be wrong, right? So you just take that and say, hey, we're going to assume it's going to work. And then you need what? You need a fallback plan. What if it doesn't work? How do you fix that? How can you go back to a previous version? Well, you can. If you do an in-place upgrade, you have 10 days to do that. Then you can actually revert it back. It's going to work perfectly fine, unless you do a refresh or reinstall it, because then you don't have a going back. Another thing you should do is that, because we already have this a couple of times for customers, they removed all the previous images. We're not going to do 1511 anymore, so just get rid of everything old. And then they need to poke around with in-place upgrade and verify that it works. And they realize that the only thing we can test on is real computers that is used in production, because we don't have all the old images. Now we could create, no, exactly, we can't, because we can't get any downloads from that, so we can't recreate that. So stick with your task sequences and your images until you don't have any physical computers running that particular version. But as long as you have one 1607, you're going to need to have the task sequence and the image and everything around it so you can recreate that one more time. So, besides this, we also have, of course, the configuration manager updates. They doesn't come twice a year. They have a schedule that is
3 times a year. And they typically are either just before there is a new Windows version or shortly after there is a new version. So the deal with the ones that comes before, and Niehaus actually gave a pretty good explanation about that in his session, they will have like the basic support for the next version on the version that is just before. But to get all the bangs and whistles, and for example, to be able to use new Windows 10 features in Config Manager, you kind of have to wait until the Config Manager team releases the next one, the one that's being released after Windows 10. So you can still start and pilot and test things early on, but you kind of have to wait a little bit to get to play around with new features in that Windows 10 release.
Yeah. And things that is easily to miss is the runtimes, for instance. I mean, I've been using C++ 2005 for many years. It's now unsupported. I can't get any security patches. And that means I couldn't put that in the reference image. But I also need to figure out all the application that actually relies on C++ 2005, contact the vendors and ask them to, hey, we need a new version of this because this is kind of old, really ugly and old. We need to have that, otherwise we can't continue because we're going to run unsupported and not secure software, and we can't do that. So,
can you repeat the question, sir?
Is there any way to work out which applications are heavily reliant on a particular runtime?
So is there a way of finding out if you have an application that requires an old runtime?
I know one way. Remove the runtime and see if everything works. That is going to be the method in the future.
That was a good question, sir.
I don't know if you remember, but back in the old days when we actually did train and educate people on Ethernet, there was something, and there actually was a really old Ethernet protocol. Today we're using carrier sense multiple access collision detection. Throw the package on the wire, hope it doesn't crash, and if it do, we fix that. The other way is actually a carrier sense multiple access collision avoidance. They didn't pick that protocol because it's so darn slow. And the way you do with that is that you first announce that, hey, I'm going to send a package. Hold on. And then you're going to send a package. And that is horribly slow.
So to answer the question in more practical terms,
try it.
If you have been using the configure and app model and configured supersedence and things, or dependencies in this case, for those runtimes, yes, it's quite easy to figure out which apps that have those dependencies. However, nobody does that ever. They put the runtime in the ref image, and that's it, and they're happy with that. I haven't seen a tool or script to trace it backwards. Anybody seen a? Andreas says it's doable, so he will write the code for you. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
And these sessions are recorded.
Yes. So, and is it tomorrow morning or will it be done on Sunday morning? Oh, okay. So it's Monday morning. It might take a while.
Can't go wrong with PowerShell. Exactly.
Exactly.
You want the slides?
Yeah, we can do slides.
More?
No, I'm done. Are you done? Oh, yes. So the smorgasbord, which is the Swedish term, this is what you have. It's about picking and choosing. You can combine many of these at the same time if you want to, but they all come down to one thing. It's about hoping for the best or being in control. Now, as long as hoping for the best works, I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm good. It's just that currently hoping for the best is not always going to work. We can use WSUS. If we do WSUS, we're going to download everything to the WSUS server, and then we're going to approve the updates, and then we're going to distribute the updates to the clients, and they're going to be happy to pick it up.
I should clarify that this servicing here is for feature updates that we're talking about, not the monthly updates.
No.
So feature updates.
Feature updates. There are good and bad things with WSUS servicing, but it works. It does really work. But it's one of those, I really hope this is going to fly. Because you can't do anything before, and you can't do anything after, You're just going to lay down the image, and that's going to be it.
So what are the limitations with WSUS servicing, really? No. What are the benefits of it? The files that you download are actually a little bit smaller. They are more highly compressed, so they are a bit smaller. What are the limitations, the downside of using WSUS? You lose control. It's a little bit more tricky to add in driver packages during deployment. It's a little bit more tricky to add in language packs. It doesn't mean it's not doable, because there are hooks into WSUS to do this. It's just it's a bit more tricky than to just use a plain sequence to do the same job.
Exactly. It's just a service. I provide the service of these drivers and these images, and the client will be happy to pick it up and try to do the best effort, right? Then we can use light touch task sequences. That also works.
And this is typically for those of you not running Config Manager.
Yeah. So a light touch task sequence basically means that we now package that in somehow, and we have a starting point. When I want to do an in-place upgrade of the machine to get the new features, I start the sequence. The sequence also has the ability to do something before.
Like uninstalling an application that is breaking upgrades.
And it could do something after.
Reinstalling the same app again.
Yeah, and it could roll back. If it didn't succeed, then we need to do this. We have a question over here.
Yeah, what about Windows 10S?
Windows 10.
Windows 10S?
Oh, the question is around the new Windows 10S version. I have absolutely no idea. Mikael, do you know if there will be support in Config Manager for Windows 10S? The answer, I think, was no.
Windows 10S will only run store-signed code, and Config Manager client's not store-signed.
Windows 10S will only run store-signed code, and the Config Manager client is not. So that was a really good question, though.
Yeah.
I have to move. Thank you.
We can also use the task sequence to roll back, so if it didn't succeed, then do this. So it's just control instead of having, here it is. Yeah. Then we have
Config Manager, and it's basically the same thing. Config Manager natively has a servicing node to which you can create service plans, and you can download feature updates and have Config Manager deploy them that way. Basically the same benefits or same limitations as WSUS have. One thing that Config Manager can do, though, however, it is, after all, a content distribution engine, and somehow, so the ini file that is required to do these tweaks to the feature updates, like adding support for language packs, you can actually have Config Manager push those scripts out, or that ini file out to each computer. So that's quite shiny.
And then we have Config Manager task sequences, which basically is the same as a light touch task sequence. It's just now we use Configuration Manager. But it has the basic fundamentals of we initiate this task sequence. We can have when, how, if, what, and if something happens, fix it this way. You need to do this before, you need to do this after, inject drivers. It's a task sequence.
Create a ticket and help desk system. Send an email to somebody. Sorry, we tried to deploy 10 computers. 3 of them were low on disk space. Report that back in. There was a session this week of Accenture, probably the largest Windows 10 rollout so far. I was listening to it last night. It's available on the download for sessions from Ignite. It's basically their story on how they did Windows 10 deployments. If you haven't seen that session here, it was really good. How they took the project from end to end. 411,000 some boxes. It's a few. Yeah.
The last option, we just specified PowerShell here because batch files just sounds too boring. But it's just running a command line. I mean, you can run the setup engine. And the fact is that when we do servicing, the setup engine is being used. So all these other methods is just a way to get the bits down to the computer and fire up setup. That's it.
With 14 different parameters.
Yeah. It has a bunch of parameters. And of course, if you want to create your own solution, which you can, you don't have light touch, you don't want to spend time on that. You don't have configuration manager, you don't want to spend time on that. You have 400 computers and they really need to be upgraded to the latest version, or Light Touch Config Manager or WSUS doesn't fit in that particular solution, then you run a PowerShell script or a PowerShell command line. I'm going to show you demos of that as well.
Speaking of, it says demos.
It says demos. We
Your
can do
screen.
demos. My screen.
That'll be 8.
My screen is 8. So before we continue with the demos, Johan said, I'm running a dedupe job to compress the machine. Yeah, that's the PowerShell script to run the dedupe job. It's very simple. It finds all the dedupe disks, and it compresses them, and then it says done. And it's pretty much like watching paint dry. Kind of boring.
Sidebar.
Let's talk about
WSUS.
WSUS. Let's find the WSUS server.
So this is standalone WSUS. For those of you not using Config Manager, we'll come back to the Config Manager in a bit.
So this is WSUS, and that means that if you're running WSUS on the 2012 R2 server or 2012, you're going to spend at least a day or two to just make it work with Windows 10. There is a patch that automatically gets downloaded, and when it does, it breaks WSUS immediately and badly. And the only way to fix that is to not uninstall the patch, because that doesn't help. You really need to run a command line to specify servicing. You need to enable a new HTTP activation services. And then you also need to re-download all the content that has already been downloaded that contains the WIM files or the ESD files, because it doesn't have the ability to save the encryption keys.
So if you did it right from the beginning, added in the patch, read the release notes that said you were supposed to run this command line after applying this patch, and then downloaded the stuff, then it works. Otherwise, you have to run a reset.
I would say that the experience around this is a brand new way to learn bad language. But when you've done that, you're good to go. So here's all my updates, and some of them are actually updated and approved. So if I show everything, anything except declined, and I do a refresh, it's of course going to show me all the 7,600 whatever. So let's go to upgrades, and here I can see the same thing and do that. Maybe I actually, no, I removed the other ones, because you're going to get all the languages, and especially when you pick English, you get 2. What do you mean 2 English? Yes, the British and the US English, which of course means that you can't improve them all. You just need to go into every other and remove the Great Britain version.
Oh, the other way around.
Yeah, you can do the other.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you will
sorry.
be surprised how important that is for depending on which Atlantic part you're
I'm so
on.
sorry, that will never happen again. And then you need to approve this patch. Also, you need to understand the following things. There are also multiple versions of this. In the beginning, you're going to have version 1, and then it takes a couple of months, then you have version 2, and another couple of months, it's version 3. That's because at the same time as Microsoft creating new ISO images, they also create new patches. And now you shouldn't approve all of them. Just approve the last one, because it takes forever to download them.
If you want, I can smack my colleague for being rude.
No, I'll do that later.
Okay, you'll do it later.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the only thing you need to do is approve them. It is possible to approve all the patches for all the computers. And I do remember a customer that actually did approve all these patches for unsigned computers. And they also using the WSUS server to create reference images. And he was so puzzled of the fact that when he was trying to do a reference image of one version of Windows 10, it ended up as another version. And it couldn't be sysprepped. No, because you're forcing all the different versions to become the same version. So don't approve them to unknown computers, because then everybody gets it. In this case, just to show you how it's possible to difference, is that in this case, I do have 2 computer groups. And if I want to approve a patch to a certain group, I can. That means when I have grouping inside here, I can either use group policy or use the WSUS console to move computers from one group to another. So I can take this computer and change the membership and specify that that machine is supposed to be upgraded to Windows 10 1703. It's going to be put in that group, and we're going to have, next time it's going to check in, it's going to see that, hey, I'm a member of that group, therefore it's going to get the patches. Now, another way to do the same thing is using group policy and assign group membership. That means that you basically have an Active Directory group, and you put all the machines that you want to upgrade in that Active Directory group. The next time the group policy engine kicks in, it's going to be targeted for that particular group. Another trick, of course, is if you don't have a management system, you don't have a configuration manager. You can go into WSUS, and you can see here that this machine is actually a Windows 10 machine. And that's good. What version? No, it doesn't say. Thank you. But someone else tells you that. The fact is that you can run get AD computer and do a select object. In this case, I also specify the properties of operating system and operating system version, which means that if I run this, I can now see all my computers that runs a particular version. I can easily use PowerShell to move these computers to that specific group that is supposed to be upgraded. They're going to end up in a group, and the next time the group policy engine kicks in, they're going to be upgraded. So even if you don't have configuration manager, but you have Active Directory, you can sort of doing it in a rather easy way anyway. You don't need to manually poke around with computers. It's a pick and choose. This is really old computer. You should not run this. Don't do that. And here's, if I run that one, it's going to be the following computers that runs the 16288 version, and so on.
That would be an insider preview.
Could be.
It is.
So it is possible to use PowerShell together with Active Directory, together with WSUS, and achieve some kind of functionality around this.
We also use PowerShell a lot for standalone WSUS to decline the right updates, because there are quite limited options in the WSUS GUI to actually do those kind of declines. And for example, if you're not deploying any 32-bit operating systems, do you really need to download all 32-bit updates? You do not. And these days, Microsoft actually finally tagged them with both 32 and 64-bit architectures. Yeah. So in PowerShell, it's actually quite easy to say, hey, give me all updates, including x86, decline.
So this PowerShell script does run this. It also exercises the database. But here we have, we run cleanup to remove. In this case, we also have the get every update that has been superseded and remove them. Because they aren't really removed from the WSUS console from the beginning. Even if you decline them, they're going to stick around for another 30 days. So I want to remove them immediately. So you can exercise the WSUS using PowerShell.
Can I steal your console for just a second?
You can absolutely steal my console for a couple of seconds.
Good.
1, 2,
be nice.
3.
Go bang. Here. This will be my Twitter handle. Something like this. Twitter, possibly. I was hoping I would find it.
Maybe you need to add the Twitter handle thing.
That is my Twitter handle. Now, this is a Microsoft conference. I will use Bing. Go on with your business.
Yeah, so if you want to have this PowerShell script, you can find it here. And it's going to be the, where is it? WSUS somewhere? That's health check. Don't do that. I think I have a cleanup. I can't remember it. It's going to be somewhere around here. It's always here. There you go. Thank you. So it's here. That SQL script comes from the WSUS team. So it's not me that created it, but the PowerShell script was. Yes?
For your PowerShell script that does the automatic updates, sometimes we don't approve the newer update because it causes an issue. So does your PowerShell script account for that? In other words, does it check to see if the new update is already approved and then decline the superseded update?
So the question is if the script checks if a certain update is set to a certain way and then it takes care of that. No, it doesn't. But the only thing you need to do here is that you say, you can see here it says get WSUS update. You can tell it to whatever you want to. So find everything according to your rule set and then you deny them. So it's just pick and choose. Just run get WSUS update, and it's going to spit out a bunch of patches, and then you just use where object for any rules you want to have. And
It was a good question. So.
Yes. So it's rather easy to fix.
Can you go back to my screen just a little bit? So this was the one I was looking for. This is actually a customer environment I was working, and running the PowerShell script to decline the correct updates and do the cleanup job and everything did save a little bit of data on that WSUS server.
It also makes it much faster, actually.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, surprisingly. So that was how to do it in WSUS. And what happens then, of course, on the client side, is that it's going to pop up and say, hey, there's a update here, I'm going to download that. Now, it's going to take a while for the client to download it, depending on network, of course. And the machine is going to be upgraded. It takes about half an hour, 45 minutes, usually. And the first time the user logs on, it's going to take a while. We already have questions about how can I shorten the first logon time after an update. And I know that Microsoft is working on that. It's going to get faster and faster, but it's going to take a while. And that doesn't mean on Monday. It's going to take a while. We're talking about releases of version, but it's going to get faster. They just need to figure out how to fix it. So that was the WSUS.
What about the sequences? What about getting control?
Oh, you mean control? Yeah, we can do that. Now, this is Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, and I have a bunch of things here. Number one, we have the operating systems here. And we need to have the clean, pristine versions of the operating system. Now, let's say that you do download the latest and the greatest version, and that's what you're playing around with. You need to check if Microsoft has released a new ISO. They usually do within a month or two.
It depends. On volume licensing side, they're updated like every now and then, typically when it hits that semi-annual channel window. On MSDN, they're often updated almost every month, which is very shiny.
So what you need to do is that you need to have access to that, or you harass the people that have access, and eventually you're going to get access. Just ask the person to check if there's a new update every morning, and do that for a year. They're either going to kill you or they're going to give you access. It's very simple. Then you need to have drivers, because we might need to have drivers for the new version. We might need to have packages, because we might need to add packages. But hey, that doesn't work.
So here's the deal. A lot of companies are surprised by the fact that different versions of Windows 10 may actually use different drivers. So HP, for example, they recently started to categorize their own drivers in Windows 10 versions. So if you're using that Softpack Download Manager, for example, you will see 1703 specific version drivers and 1607 specific version drivers. So they do need to be added to the console here as well, if that model requires a driver. Yes.
How do you configure WSUS for a non-computer?
Sorry?
How do you configure WSUS for a non-computer? When you create and go in.
How do we configure a WSUS for unknown computers or unassigned computers? That's simply a default target group. So you simply approve the updates to that group and you're good with it. But it was a good question.
Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I have a question about HP drivers specifically, or OEM drivers. Right now, HP will not commit to releasing drivers until target. So how am I supposed to do pre-release of hardware that has a specific set of drivers?
That is a specific OEM question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, one of the OEMs doesn't release drivers until they are targeted.
HP.
In this case, HP. That's the mysterious OEM. And the question is how I'm supposed to be able to test and verify. That is a discussion you should have with the vendor. Now, I think you should remember this. You are the buyer and they are the seller. Make them understand that. It's very simple. It's just about, we need to have this, and I need to have this from you. So just
Luckily,
talk to
historically, I mean, we've been doing upgrades now for about 2 years. If I have 20 models that I'm upgrading from one Windows 10 version to the next, typically it's not more than like half of them that actually need drivers, and sometimes even less, just a few of them. So it's not going to be every single model, but you still need to test them. So if you can reduce the number of models that you support, you have less to test twice a year in terms of drivers.
We usually run with the old drivers in the beginning, and then after a couple of months, the vendor is releasing new drivers, or you can find the new versions of this, generic updated version of that driver on Windows Update, and then you start using them. So it's going to be a constant checking for drivers and reading about notes. Do I really need to have this? Oh yeah, it fixes a blue screen. That's nice. We want to have that driver because it doesn't do blue screen anymore, and I like that. The reason why I organized this in folders.
Michael.
We've also run into an issue with drivers where Windows 10 originally was supported on the hardware. An update came out and that hardware is no longer supported. So that we're going to be running into much more going down the path.
So the comment was, if I try to summarize it, basically the vendor had originally support for Windows 10, but as time went by, they dropped the support. There are no drivers available. What I heard from Nihau's talk, whatever day that was, Microsoft is trying to step in there to continue to deliver new drivers. They try to, but it can take them some time to do that. Of course, they won't do every hardware on the planet. Really, really old stuff that is not performant with Windows 10 will obviously not be done for, but they actually do this to some extent.
Yeah, the vendors usually support the current operating system at the same time as the hardware is supported. At the same time the hardware is not supported, they don't create any drivers update for it. So yeah, after 3 years, it doesn't matter if you run supported drivers anymore because the hardware is not supported anyway, so you can use the global or generic drivers. The reason why we organize this is because this way we can target specific task sequences to use specific driver groups. We need to have that, which I have, and in that case I also need to have task sequences, and here they are. Here is the task sequences for 1703, for instance. I have 2 of them. I have a bare metal deployment and I have my in-place upgrade. Now the in-place upgrade is really simple. It is the following number of gigantic steps. It validates, inject drivers, upgrade Windows, catch failure, or continue running these steps. This needs a slight modification because the inject driver step includes all the drivers.
By default.
By default. So we're going to flip this into nothing and install everything from nothing, which doesn't make sense for normal people. And then we're going to set this to Windows 10, and that was 1703 \% model And with that, it's going to just grab the drivers from that folder, and it's going to force them to be injected into the operating system. So
when setup runs.
When setup runs. So that means that everything from nothing plus that is going to be injected when we do the installation. Then we run the Windows upgrade. It is possible to check this. It works in Light Touch. I tried it. It just takes forever because it's going to, of course, download the patches. But you're going to download them anyway. This is just a question of done, or just done. Meaning, do you want the machine to be perfectly patched, ready to go when it's done? Or are we supposed to do something after? I don't like doing manual step after. So this is what you run. And how do you run the script?
Well, you go to the client.
It's so complicated. You need to run the script.
In the previous versions of MDT, it was actually quite easy to run scripts, start up Light Touch scripts remotely. In the newer versions, not so easy. So, yep. Yes, sir.
I saw an option there that you have that enables BitLocker. Does it check the TPM on the PC?
So the question is, it was an option, BitLocker in the sequence. In terms of when you do the feature updates, what will happen is that setup in that process, it's going to disable BitLocker, and it's going to be enabled back when the setup is done. The problem you may run into is that what if you will have multiple reboots after in that sequence to do things that you needed to do as part of your deployment? Then it will be up to you to, if needed, disable, enable BitLocker back again. For example, we've seen companies, they are doing BIOS updates as part of that process as well. And typically when you do BIOS updates, you don't want to have BitLocker enabled. You want to temporarily suspend it, and when you're done with the job, put it back again. It may work, it may not work otherwise, but you typically have a more reliable thing. So setup is pretty smart around BitLocker. The only time where we really need to check TPM chips and stuff is typically for normal type deployments, like bare metal deployments. We typically add in, I have it in my sequence, I can show it later, but we add in additional validation scripts for TPMs. So we can get the status, and only if that status is happiness, we will go ahead and do the job. But it was a good question.
It was.
The last one, though. I mean, more good questions, but I'm out of books.
So the only thing you do is to run this task sequence, and then you wait, and then it's done. Now the question is, I did fill this manually by, filling out the form. Can I automate this? Yes, you can add everything on the command line. Okay, can I run this remotely? Yes, you can. Do I really need to run around and touch computers? No, you don't. It is possible to use Light Touch task sequences as command line, running either PSExec or remote PowerShell on all the machines. So yes, it is doable to use Light Touch and automate a large portion of deployments. This is just watching paint dry, so we're not going to do that.
So the question is, can we enable multicast for in-place? I have not seen anything of that. Michael, Neo's help? Nope, he's shaking his head.
Depends on the peer-to-peer mechanism you're using.
Peer-to-peer mechanisms is being used. So if you have other clients having stuff, then it works. But multicast I have not seen, and apparently it's not available.
So we talked about WSUS, we talked about Light Touch task sequences. Do we have anything else to demo?
Oh, yes, we do. Config Manager, of course. In the Config Manager console, since version 15.11, if you go to the software library, there is a Windows 10 servicing node. I'm not the biggest fan of this one. I'm not. For the same reason as we typically do not use WSUS standalone for upgrades. I want to have more control than this. However, if you want to go ahead, you can create, well, obviously I have all updates downloaded here, available. This assumes that you approve the upgrade class in your sub-properties. I can create servicing plans, so I can create schedule things on how I want them to create packages and deploy them and whatnot. If you need to, for example, add in support for language packs when using servicing plans, you have to do a little bit of I shouldn't say hacking because it actually is supported, but there is some extra configurations that you need to do. And Mr. Niall Brady is here at the conference as well, assuming he's heading home today, but let me see. I did put that in the Ignite folder so I would find it easily. Here we go. He has a step-by-step guide on how to use language packs when using servicing plans in Config Manager. What it all comes down to, there is an ini file. This one here. If such file exists on your client, on the local client, at the time setup is running through WSUS, or the upgrade is running through WSUS, it will use that for instructions. So how can we, through Config Manager, copy out a file to a specific folder on the client? It's not that hard, really. Create a package, script, whatever, boom, out with the file, done. So that's all it takes. Create a well-formatted file, add the instructions into it, create packages where you have your language files so they are being copied out as well, and then you can get it to work this way at all. But I prefer the more controlled method of using a sequence for this. So here I have a few sequences. This is my Windows 7 upgrade one, sorry, Windows 17.03 upgrade one. And as you can see, I've added some changes to the default template. I've added in an additional upgrade assessment, meaning a copy of the default step, but added up here with a checkbox selected to say, hey, before you actually try to do the job for real, do a validation. Check if my machine is good to go. It will still load and download the package, unfortunately, at least for now. So it's going to be a 3.5 gig download. But it's going to run the setup without doing anything. It's going to check if this machine is OK. Does it have any applications that will break my upgrade? Does it have enough disk space? Does it have any driver incompatibility or compatibility issues with it? It will tell you up front, and they will spit back a return code. And that return code you can use for the rest of the sequence. So you can say, if I get a code saying out of disk space, contact help desk. If I'm having an application that doesn't work, contact help desk, whatever. You get the idea. But I can also say, if it's happy. If setup endian have like total happiness at this moment, you can use that return code as a condition on the following steps in the sequence that will actually do the upgrade. Why should you start download drivers and things if you can't run it anyway? So I have a condition here. So this is obviously the return code of happiness. This means setup is really happy about the result. If you look in the log file, it's going to be a hex value. You convert it to decimal, and life is good. But then I can start to do my things. So if I need any drivers, I actually added in a download package content action with that model. I use a condition on it. On this one, I'm using a traditional WMI query. Why? Because the default sequence is not MDT integrated, so I cannot use model alias or model or things like that unless I also add in the MDT integration, which I could. Then I'm simply using a undocumented, I guess it's documented now since this is recorded, variable to inform setup that you have drivers to use. Look for them in this folder. And the beautiful thing of looking for them in that folder, I specify that on these packages to download to that folder is automatically cleaned up when we're done. So that's kind of nice. I like this one better than the other one that you can add for additional parameters to set up. We typically use that for adding in third-party disk encryption drivers and things like that. But this one works quite nice for drivers. And then I run the upgrade. And then I do not select this one. If you select this one and you specify a folder and that folder is not there, it's going to fail. So that's why I have the download driver package content and I add instructions, and on the step that set instructions I have a condition. Only do this if there actually are any drivers. So if I deploy to a model that doesn't need any drivers, obviously the folder won't be there, and this won't run either, and setup will be happy. Otherwise, it will fail. But anyway, with the sequence, you can do a lot of things before and after, which you simply cannot do using the servicing plans. Sure, you can fix language packs and stuff, but this gives you more control. And if I look in this sequence that I have, if I go to properties, what I've added in 16, a few versions back, it was the ability to have custom notifications in your sequence. I think they should probably have that on the deployment itself, but they have it on the sequence. So I can do custom text here. So if I go to a client, let me see where I put that client. Here. This client is in a collection to which I have deployed said upgrade sequence. So if I open up Software Center, and if life is good, the config manager client is happy, there's going to be an upgrade sequence available for me. And if I try to run this one, click install, at this point I'm going to see that custom message. So you can add additional stuff, of course, but you get the idea. And then I can continue and do the setup here. Now, it's going to start the sequence engine. It's going to download everything it needs, run the sort of validation step, and if that turns to happiness, it's going to continue and actually do the upgrade. To make this go faster, in this environment, I'm using both peer cache and branch cache available. So that means, if I flip over to my site server while this is running, what I have is a few collections. In this case, these are clients in New York. I also have a remote office in Chicago. But I have actually pushed another sequence to them with instructions of pre-cache information. This is a very short sequence. Very short sequence. Its only job is to download the package or packages that my other sequences needs. So I push this out in advance. Because if you do some clever things in Config Manager, like pushing out the deployment, you set a deadline at some point, but you set an available thing sooner, it will start to trickle down that stuff. If I push out the sequence in this case, those are for apps, it will immediately put those packages in the client cache. And when the upgrade runs at some point, it's already there. It's already local. So this is basically smart use of bandwidth in the environment. And if I have branch cache and things enabled, they're actually going to peer-to-peer that content in between them on a sort of a package-by-package type level. Quite efficient. But it's not going to be much more exciting. It's going to run through the setup. There are some fantastic resources on the Channel 9 website. If you search for Windows 10 upgrade, there is a session from Ignite 2015 by Aziz, takes you behind the scenes of setup. That back then. There was a session last year by Pallavi, also search for Windows 10 upgrade, again giving you an updated version of that same talk, but the information is a little bit different. But it learned you troubleshoot, go behind the scenes, fix things, and whatnot. Very shiny.
I have a note on this.
Yeah.
So when the TS is running with its own downloader. And if you're on Pro, which a lot of people are, you won't actually do any branch cache. And if you use the task sequence ACP, you can get around that. So they will still create this job for that.
So Andreas is coming out. There are some differences in this behavior on Windows 10 Pro versus Enterprise. Enterprise has the complete branch cache implementation. Windows Pro has a subset of it. But there are ways to actually hack it so you can fix it also for Windows 10 Pro clients. Thank you. I bet you have some info on that on your blog, right?
On Monday morning. If we start poking in the future, may I borrow your screen?
Yes, sir. I'm done.
If we start poking in the...
Is there a way during this upgrade process that you can tell the store to automatically update any apps that it's downloaded?
So the question is, can I force the store to automatically, or basically Windows to automatically update all the store apps? Haven't seen such things.
Yeah.
Niehaus is shaking his head, so that typically means no. He knows everything. So
I'm the buyer, so you gotta fix it.
good comment. Last time I checked, TrueSec did not write any operating systems, and this is where I work.
The interesting thing is that if you check the Windows update log on a newer build, you're going to see something called other updates. And if you check that, you're going to see that it's actually downloading the store apps.
You will get that info in the event log also. I just don't know a way to trigger it right now.
Okay.
I know how to stop it completely, though. Had to do that for reference images.
If we check the what's going to happen in the future, this is the 278 release. And if I go to advanced options, they now have the delivery optimization here. And that they used to have. They just didn't have this. The ability to set bandwidth, monthly upload bandwidth and download settings, and as well as the activity monitor. Because this actually reads how much it's doing download for peer-to-peer. All these settings are also available through
Group policy.
Group policies. So you can specify exactly how each client will work, depending on what kind of client you have. They also added another thing, and that is the ability to control Windows Update as a provider. You can run, for instance, the version pending reboot, and here you have the ability to start scan and run Windows Update. So depending on, you can actually say that I want you to install this Windows update with the following name, whatever it has, from our WSUS server or from Microsoft, and I want you to download it only, or download and install. So we will see in the future that controlling this behavior isn't just the client-side clicking, it could be client-side scripting. And talk about that, I'm working with people at Microsoft right now because they need a method of mass deploying upgrades. And here's a PowerShell script that actually pushes out a Windows 10 upgrade to anything. We do some weird stuff, but basically we copy the setup files down to the client, and then we create a batch file, which we then run. And when we do, we can verify that the net result of that batch file is returned back, and then we can see if we'd have issues, we didn't have issues, whatever we had, and the only thing we do then is create a new batch file and use psexec to fire up the process of installing Windows. So that means that it is possible for a customer with nothing at all to actually control and manage feature updates as well. You just need a PowerShell script that is I wouldn't
and
say
this
it's
you
long.
will make available when?
There's a deadline in October.
So October then.
So October then. The deadline is set to, I think it's last October, but it will be presented as a solution. So yeah, it really doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure you have. You need to figure out a way to do these feature upgrades. That's it. And when you do, you need to pick one of these methods or multiple. What do we do with remote locations? Maybe the smartest way is to say WSUS, or maybe Windows Update for Business, or maybe something else, like a standalone media, or maybe we have a configuration manager, but we only use that for, we actually talked about this as a combination. You can use configuration manager to deploy a standalone light touch media and run the setup process locally on that machine. And then when it reboots, it joins back and you're done. So there are multiple ways to do it.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank you for spending the afternoon with us. We'll be around for questions, but thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Great weekend.